views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we bring you the latest on the recent news on the extension of the eviction moratorium. What does that mean for tenants, as well as for landlords? Afterwards, we'll discuss how the Salvation Army is helping the community that's been severely impacted by Hurricane Ida. And then we'll talk about the Bronx's commercial real estate landscapes. We'll talk about that and how affordable housing can be improved. Details later on in the show. Then finally, we'll discuss how the Acacia network is encouraging parents as well as teens to get vaccinated. So we've got a great show coming up for you. We want you to stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. Hello, everyone. I am Daren Jaime, and you are watching Open. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, and Open is the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. It's a live program that brings it right to your TV set. Well, we want to let you know that our viewers can stay connected to us in a variety of different ways. You can find us on our social media platforms at BronxNet TV, our website at bronxnet.org. And we also want to thank our viewers who are also sharing with us as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on Manhattan Neighborhood Network on the MNN channel. Well, a lot is going on throughout the course of the past week, but we'll take you through a couple of things with our Bronx updates. We start off with unemployment news. The package of pandemic-related federal unemployment benefits, which have kept families afloat for almost 17 months, and $463 million in weekly unemployment assistance for New York City residents, has now expired. Now, about 10% of the city's population, or about 800,000 people, will have federal aid eliminated, though many will continue to receive state benefits. Economists have projected New York City may not fully regain all of its pandemic losses until the year 2024. Well, staying right there, in other news, nearly 1 month after the Correction Officers Benevolent Association sued the Department of Corrections for inhumane treatment and conditions, one organization is calling on all detention centers, including Rikers Island, to shut down. Our Bronx reporter Arlene Makoko has a story.
Nearly 1 month after the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association sued the Department of Corrections over inhumane conditions at city jails, this grassroots group called Eyes on You were outside Horizon Juvenile Center at 560 Brook Avenue, calling on all detention centers, including Rikers Island, to be shut down.
We want all the prisons to close. Every prison, every juvenile detention center, everything has to be closed.
Data shared by COBA under President Benny Bosquio Jr. shows that in the month of June, out of a little more than 7,500 officers, 2,757 didn't show up for work. This creating a strain on others forced to work additional shifts. Toifo Asheke, representing detainees, says it's a system that needs to end.
A lot of their families have been impacted and destroyed by the prison industrial complex. And it's not just those who are inside, right? It is the families of those people on the outside who are now deprived of their loved ones.
Other factors causing concern with families include data released by COBA that shows 1,000 officers have resigned since January of 2019. All this while this year the jail population has increased by 45% from July 2020 to June 2021 due to a backlog in court appearances as a result of COVID-19.
We've been seeing that during the pandemic, the conditions been worsening for inmates inside, from not getting commissionary, to starvation, to conflict being created by the CEOs themselves so that they can create violent conditions for inmates.
Joining in on the conversation by phone from the Vernon C. Bain Correctional Center was William Clanton, who talked about the lack of resources as well as the safety risks.
We've just been informed that there are a couple of COVID Delta cases within the institution. And that has been quite dire for many of us because we have been interacting with many of these guys who were positive.
Since the lawsuit, the Department of Corrections under Commissioner Vincent Schiraldi has promised to hire 400 additional officers, create a young adults task force, charge violent prisoners, and break up gang housing. With this last proposal, one that would place too many in harm's way, shared Aaron Brandt, whose 19-year-old friend has been incarcerated at Rikers Island for 2 years.
They made a new system about breaking up the gang housing, so they put him in houses with a bunch of different gangs, and they jump him, and he got hospitalized. He got hospitalized for almost 2 days. He got beat up pretty badly, and by the grace of God, he's still alive.
So Eyes on You say they chose this particular facility because they want to stop the youth to prison pipeline. They're hoping that this rally will make a difference, and they're planning on visiting others around the city as well. For BronxNet, this is Arlene Makoko.
And thank you, Arlene. And that is all the time we have for our Bronx updates. You get them every week here on Wednesday Open. We encourage you to stay connected to us. We're taking a quick break, but Open returns coming up right after this. Welcome back. New York State is the first state to pass a new measure protecting struggling renters since the Supreme Court attempted to rid the existing shields against eviction. Now, New York State lawmakers agreed to it extending sweeping protections against evictions into next year, moving to keep hundreds of thousands of people whose finances have been battered by the effects of COVID-19. And the question is, what does it actually mean moving forward? Sharing more details in this conversation, we're pleased to have with us partner at David A. Gallo and Associates LLP, Robert M. Link. And Robert, good to have you again.
Daren, great to be here again. Thanks.
It seems as though we moved the needle a little bit forward again. And as we're looking at this, of course, renters can say, listen, I thank goodness that I have this protection. But really, for a lot of people, landlords included, this becomes a more challenging effort because we know from the outset that people have definitely had questions about those who have not paid rent and the backlog. Talk to us about what this actually means moving forward.
Well, I mean, it's a challenging situation for everyone. It's a challenging situation because we've never been in a situation where we have the economy closed, where we can't be cheek to cheek next to each other. We need to check vaccinations. We need to make sure everybody's safe. So we have these historic measures that are being taken by the legislature, by the courts, in order to keep people safe, to give people an opportunity to pay back those rent arrears. However, this is taking a long time. I started appearing on your show, I think back in May of 2020. At the time, I said, I easily see this moratorium being extended through the end of the year. The last time I was on, I said, I see this moratorium being extended basically for all intents and purposes to June 2022. Now, I think that was a bit of a conservative proclamation. So basically what lawmakers have done is they took the old law that the Supreme Court had a problem with, and they strengthened it. They added due process for the landlord. So if you're a tenant and you say, I'm having a COVID hardship, and you affirmatively submit with the court or to your landlord an attestation saying that you've had a hardship, you're going to be protected. You can breathe a sigh of relief because the landlord cannot move forward with the case. The court will not move forward with the case until January 15th, 2022. So that you breathe a sigh of relief there. Now, the due process aspect that they needed to add as a fix to the concerns raised by the Supreme Court was that the landlord should have an opportunity to challenge the assertion that you're having a COVID-19 related hardship. So if you're the tenant and you say, listen, I don't have anywhere to move, I can't move during COVID, I've had a decrease in income, I've had an increase in expenses, whatever the case may be, the landlord should have an opportunity to challenge that under the new law. But for all intents and purposes, particularly in the city of New York, where they can't handle the calendar that they already have, I don't realistically see those evidentiary hearings, that motion practice kind of coming to fruition. I think the best hope for landlords is that, the federal courts, again, come to their rescue.
I think you leaned into my question I was getting ready to ask you, because we already know there is an existing backlog when it comes to court cases. You can't even get into the court in New York City. A lot of people have been waiting prior to COVID. Given the fact that you've got COVID now and you've got this housing challenge, is the best way that I'll say it, and I'm struggling to get in, how do I make it into the court system, given the fact that there's this heavy backlog? Are there enough courts to be able to deal with the situation at present?
The answer is no. Daren, you hit the nail right on the head. There were, thousands upon thousands of cases filed in the New York City housing courts from March of 2020 through August of 2021. There were another 66,000 eviction petitions filed in New York City. Of those 66,000, only a small number of those petitions were actually assigned court dates. So in addition, and that's not including the cases where the tenant actually affirmatively filed that hardship declaration. That's overall, where probably a majority of them did not file the hardship declaration. So the courts, irrespective, at least in New York City, upstate is a different world, right? Even Long Island is different. But in New York City, even where there is no hardship declaration, the courts don't have enough time and resources to get to the petitions that are already there. So in addition to a moratorium through January 15th for the cases that have filed a hardship declaration, there's kind of a de facto moratorium that I believe is going to extend well into 2022 and maybe even beyond, because at some point, we have to get people back into courtrooms again. Not everybody is equipped to handle remote hearings or even telephone hearings. So you got to give people an opportunity to get into court, have due process, have trials, have inquests. And I really don't see that happening anytime soon. And I don't see us making progress to that point, or even a roadmap. I think there was a meeting with the administrative judge of the Queens County Housing Courts about a week ago, and he said, I got 7,000 petitions that have not been assigned a court date. My staff is going to be looking at it, and we'll be assigning, 100, 150 a week for court dates in the future beyond the January 15th, 2022 date. So do the math yourself. You're adding another 6-7 months to the process right there, just because of the backlog. So if you're a landlord, my recommendation, if you have a good tenant, help them apply for the ERAP funds. That's the $3 billion that's been set aside largely by the federal government to help tenants, pay back those arrears, work with them, try to get those funds back and try to settle these cases, because there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. It's going to keep going and going and going.
We talk about economic empowerment and really seeing people get back to work after COVID and the ability to get their income and generate their income and get back to a reasonable way of living. But when you talk about the place of landlords, we've always been talking mostly about tenants here. Landlords just seem to be the ones that are suffering. And this is how they make their living, off of tenants, off of rent, getting that income in. But yet and still for the landlord with this moratorium, they're the one that seems to be on the backside of it. Now, I know recently we've seen more and more cases of landlords now going to the court, not in defense, but actually suing. Share with us a little bit about the landlords that are actually taking things into their hands.
So if you're a landlord, you have a few options. You can go into civil court or Supreme Court, depending on the amount of money that's owed, and you can get a judgment for the amount owed. You're not going to be able to kick out the tenant. You're not going to be able to evict them and get a judgment of possession against the property, but you are going to get a judgment in court that says this amount of money is owed. Okay. The problem with that is it's kind of a moving goalpost. Every month of rent that's missing, that judgment will continue to increase. The other things that they're doing, a lot of smart landlords are trying to settle these cases and work with their tenants on applying for the ERAP funds to make themselves whole as much as possible. In exchange for taking that money, you are not allowed to evict for the following year. So those are the kinds of options that they're looking at. The other option, of course, is a legal challenge, and I think you've already seen declarations from the landlord lobby, from the Rent Stabilization Association, that they're going to go right back to court and say that this fix is unconstitutional.
Yeah. Well, what can we expect coming up after the ban? Because we've got life after that. The ban will, soon be over. What do we expect after that?
So a couple of things can happen. Remember, January 15th, 2022, that's a few months away. A lot can happen in that time. My guess is a lot of that ERAP funds are going to be gobbled up. One of the primary justifications for the extension was that the Cuomo administration did not successfully roll out this program and get this money flowing to tenants. The incoming governor, Kathy Hochul, has made this a priority. And my understanding, based on landlords I know, is that the money is flowing a little bit more easily, and that this is being made a priority. So that's what we're going to see in the immediate term. We may also see another successful legal challenge. The landlords were successful challenging the prior New York moratorium to the United States Supreme Court. That's obviously a conservative court that might be a little bit more inclined to grant relief to landlords, but we'll see how quickly they can get there. But at some point, from the landlord's perspective, don't you need to draw the line, or can this be extended indefinitely? Again, irrespective of whether or not this moratorium survives, in New York City, there will be a de facto moratorium, just by virtue of the fact that we can't cram people into courtrooms like we used to. We aren't going to be able to handle the amount of petitions being filed, the amount of trials. You're going to have new defenses being interposed beginning in 2022 that are challenging the landlord's compliance with this particular administrative order, or the ERAP process, or the moratorium. You're going to see these new legal defenses. They're going to go up to the appellate term. There's going to be new law on how we interpret these hearings. And then you have another weird kind of law. It's RPAPL 733. It essentially requires the landlord has to advise the tenant more than 10 days, no less than 17 days, that the first appearance is coming up. Well, here we have this weird procedural posture where there were cases filed in mid 2020 where they haven't been assigned a first date. So at what point do the landlords serve the tenants with the petition and the notice of petition to let them know that their court date is coming up? And how will they be afforded that opportunity? How will that process play out? I mean, there's a lot of interesting questions. We're in uncharted territory, and it's anybody's guess how long it's going to actually take. But I don't see it happening anytime soon.
And, you know, we have this preconceived notion when we talk about going to court that it's going to be a simple one and done. If you're going on that one day, you'll meet the judge, you'll have something determined, and boom, it's all over. But the fact is, that's not always the case. Some of these cases require continuances, and you move on, further elongating, you know, the calendar. From a lawyer's perspective, and how, you know, your front line and your boots on the ground, how have you been able to handle and just navigate this whole process? Because as frustrating as it is for a landlord, as frustrating as it is for a tenant, I'm hearing equally the amount of frustration on the part of legal counsel.
So I represent a lot of small businesses in eviction proceedings, and they all have different priorities. So for example, I have one client who wanted to get into eviction court as soon as possible because they wanted to assert counterclaims about the landlord's failures to make repairs. There was a dispute over the rent, and as a retaliatory measure, the landlord didn't want to maintain the property as they were required to do under the lease. So we had to make a motion in that case to expedite the hearings, even though we had also filed a hardship declaration that said, well, we have this COVID hardship and we should be afforded beyond January of 2022. So, you know, you have different fits for each particular client, and there are going to be unforeseen consequences for clients like that. I mean, I have other clients who are very pragmatic, just wanted to get out of the lease and make a settlement on the arrears. I have clients in long-term leases that, you know, invested a lot of funds into improving a property, or, you know, a residential tenant who, this is my home, I want to be there, you know, for as long as possible. So in every case, you really have to map out the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and make sure you're getting the result the tenant wants, not just you know, what you think might be the successful result.
Yeah, Robert, we're going to continue to follow this out. As always, it continues to evolve, and the more it evolves, of course, the more we bring you back to pretty much break this down for us, as it gets really hard when you start getting into the weeds. Robert M. Link, our guest here on Open. Robert, thanks again, buddy.
Anytime, Daren. Thanks a lot.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know, if you want more information, we encourage you, visit their website at dagallp.com, dagallp.com. Have more show for you here on Open. Don't go anywhere. Just going to take a quick break, and Open will return right after this.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
And welcome back to the show. The Salvation Army helps annually over 30 million Americans overcome poverty, addiction, and economic hardships through a range of social services. The Salvation Army has activated its emergency disaster services personnel in the Northeast to meet the immediate needs of survivors and first responders affected by the remnants of Hurricane Ida, and also that severely impacted several states in our region, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and of course, Connecticut. Here now and sharing more details is the General Secretary of the Salvation Army Greater New York Division, Major Kevin Stoops. And Major Stoops, good to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you today.
Great to be with you as well. And thank you for the work that you're doing, especially during this troubled time. I know we're a little bit out of Ida right now, but for a lot of people, it is still front and center. A lot of people dealing with it. And the Salvation Army has really been front and center. Share with us a little bit about the work that's going on in really helping New Yorkers and people across the tri-state area, including Delaware. I don't want Delaware to feel left out, that have actually been impacted by Ida and your volunteer services.
Sure. Well, the region that I oversee is here in the greater New York region. And our response was immediate right on that Wednesday night and into the Thursday to really start helping people who are impacted by the flood. When water comes into your house or your building, it's devastating. It's devastating emotionally. It's devastating in a physical way. And that's exactly what we've seen. So into 4 really key areas that were impacted highly, the Mamaroneck area, Queens, Staten Island, parts of Brooklyn, other parts of New York that were impacted. But the Salvation Army mobilized their mobile units with volunteers and employees to start helping people with flood cleanup kits, with food assistance if they needed it. But I want to tell you that Salvation Army does 2 things. One, they do things that have some visibility with it, that is things that you can touch. So food assistance, cleanup kits, and a person. One of our volunteers had someone come up to them. They asked them, they said, "Hey, what do you need?" And the person just simply looked at them in a helpless look and said, "I need a hug." And that's how devastated they were. The mud in their car, the mud in their house, the water damage that was done, throwing things onto the curb that were very valuable to them. All they needed at that time was the presence of a person. And we were able to provide that. But other things that we're able to provide are invisible, Daren, and this sometimes gets overlooked. And the invisible things that the Salvation Army brings to bear is faith. Faith that things can get better from this point forward. And also hope. And when we instill hope in people, that they're not alone, that we're here to help them through this storm, then that hope motivates them to really begin to bring resources to bear that they didn't even realize they had to help them improve the situation they're in. It's not easy, but those are the things that the Salvation Army has been doing. Many volunteers, many people, many cleanup kits being handed out.
You work in the area of disaster services. That's a component of what you do. But for those people that have been working with you, boots on the ground, out there in the Mamaroneck area, out there across New York City, talk to us about what you heard from them in terms of the impact, the devastation, because for a lot of people, it's something that we have not seen here in New York.
That's right. One of the things, I just spoke to one of our workers today, this morning, and what she said to me was this. She said, pictures do not give the picture of what happened, of the devastation. You can't get the smell into a picture. You can't get the feel of mud into the picture. And so what people are seeing boots on the ground is that people's lives, the things that they had invested their money into and their time, is now sitting out on the curb because it's been destroyed. And it's been destroyed by water, and it's been destroyed by the mud that comes with that. And so it's not easy to replace those. Fortunately, those are things that can be replaced, but it's not easy to replace the emotional impact. And so with the Salvation Army having people coming along the street, just walking the street and knocking on doors saying, "What do you need?" It gives an opportunity for people to experience emotional and some spiritual care that they might not have even realized they needed. And they received that from the Salvation Army.
Yeah. Well, in addition to working in the disaster area, and again, thank you for the work the Salvation Army is doing and really helping people recover, because it really is a trying time for so many people across the United States and right here in New York and also in the tri-state area. But in addition to what you've done with disaster preparedness, I know that you also work with families, and some of those families really have some challenges. But I know with children, you've got a learning program that's designed to help children out. Can you give us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Salvation Army operates 6 after-school learning sites. These are education centers that operate once the school day ends at 3 o'clock and goes till 6 o'clock to accentuate the learning that's taken place in the classroom. It will continue in the setting that we provide. Now, these are, you would imagine in these days with the COVID still going on, these are safe places for people to go. These are still places that people can go in person in a safe way and have socialization take place, activities, learning zone material being done, so that parents are confident that their children are in a safe place, that their children are receiving some educational support, homework help, if you will, and they're also receiving an opportunity to be kids once their school day is done. And what a joy it is to work with these over 500 children each day in these 6 sites that provide this kind of support to parents who desperately need it at this time.
Yeah. And also, I want to share with us, our viewers, a little bit about 9/11. Very important for us here in New York, a very sacred time for all of New York and literally the United States. I don't want to discount that, but particularly here in New York, the mecca of that destruction on that day. You have a very special remembrance that took place as well on 9/11.
Yeah, on the 10th year anniversary, the Salvation Army hosted a healing and remembrance service at its downtown location on 14th Street. We decided that we would do that again at the 20th anniversary here of 9/11. We'll gather at the 14th Street location of the Salvation Army. We're going to be plugged into the live feed of the reading of the names of the people that were that lost their lives on 9/11. And so many families were impacted by that loss of life. So we're going to be plugged into the reading of names. But more importantly than that, the Salvation Army, as well as some partner organizations, are going to have some opportunities, some wraparound services provided so that people can continue to experience healing from the events of 9/11. These things would be like mental health resources, social group resources that people could plug into, even some things for their own physical bodies, of making sure that they're plugged into, if anyone is still not signed up with the 9/11 fund for health services, things like that, all provided by partner agencies and the Salvation Army. What a joy it is to be able to come together in person and help each other heal and remember the events of 9/11. And the Salvation Army is doing their part on that day.
Yeah. During this pandemic, we've seen a great amount of volunteerism, people really in the midst of their own trouble, taking the time out to volunteer. How can people play a part in joining the Salvation Army and some of their efforts?
Yeah, the best way is to sign up on salvationarmyny.org. That's our website, and you'll see opportunities there to sign up as a volunteer. I want to tell you, one of the fears that we had going into the pandemic was that because of social distancing and safety guidelines, people were just going to give up about volunteering and helping other people. Boy, we didn't see that at all. Because every single one of our centers became a feeding center, 38 feeding centers around the region, we needed an army to get food out to people that were hungry. And volunteers, yeah, an army needed an army. And I tell you what, volunteers stepped up, even really putting themselves at risk, would you say, to be right in there, preparing food boxes, giving those to people who are in need, sometimes delivering them to the front porches of other people, simply because they wanted to help. And they found a great vehicle for helping through the Salvation Army.
Yeah. Major Kevin Stoops, I know words are sometimes inadequate, but thank you for the work of Salvation Army, particularly in New York, for helping those who've been affected by Ida and the great work that you guys continue to do. It's been a joy having you here on the show, and certainly want to have you back.
Daren, thank you very much for the opportunity. Bless you too.
Major Kevin Stoops, our guest here on Open. Now, if you want more information about the Salvation Army, we encourage you to visit their website at salvationarmyny.org or follow them on social media at Salvation Army NY. We do have more show here on Open. We encourage you to stay connected to us. Open returns coming up right after this. back to the show. Our next guest believes that the Bronx holds the key to solving New York City's affordable housing crisis. He's positive the area's ambitious affordable housing targets can be met if city officials agree to renew the 421A tax abatement and HPD funding continues to be fluid. Sharing what he means is the director of B6 Real Estate Advisors, Mitchel Flaherty. And Mitchel, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Daren.
Yeah, I mean, let's get at it. I mean, when we talk about affordable housing, it really is something that the Bronx and New York City continues to talk about consistently, the lack of affordable housing. But from your perspective, there's a pathway to really doing something about this.
Yeah, so, there was large, ambitious targets set by Mayor de Blasio for affordable housing. And one of the ways he's done that initiative is to create rezonings. One of these rezonings was happened along Jerome Avenue. Jerome Avenue was rezoned back in March 2018. And then targets are not quite being met so far for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we'll go into. But one of the main reasons is we have the expiration of the 421A that's expiring next year. And in order for developers to construct affordable housing, they need this tax incentive because construction costs are high, land costs are high. So they need a tax break in order to build the affordable housing. And what we saw in 2015, when that abatement expired, there was just a lack of new construction and basic supply and demand. If there's not as many units being built, the units will become less affordable.
And when we talk about this here, we talk about the targets not being met. You mentioned that. I was going to get to that right now. Unfortunately, those targets aren't being met. Why are we not reaching the goal? And what would you attribute to some of those reasons why?
It's very challenging for affordable housing developers to get funding from the city via HPD. It's a very long process. It takes 2 to 3 years. I was actually on a phone to a developer this morning, and there's a backlog due to COVID, and they're projecting a 6 to 7 year wait time in order to get the construction to build. So it's a very long process. So HPD, in order to create more affordable housing, needs to keep that process fluid so that more units can be built.
Yeah. And I know the commercial real estate landscape is up your alley as well. How do you view it from your perspective?
Bronx market has been strong for about 5 years or so now. And each asset class acts differently. The industrial market has been very strong through the whole New York City and nationwide. But a lot of the reason why the industrial market is strong is because a lot of the areas we've rezoned in the Bronx to residential. So again, it goes back to supply and demand, where there's a lack of supply on the industrial front, and prices tend to go up. So industrial is doing very robust market. This year to date, the volume of industrial properties has been over 30%, which typically is below 10% in proportion to the market. In addition to that, retail has also been very strong, despite what you see, a retail disaster in New York. Manhattan's struggled on the retail front because a lot of the people left during COVID. However, a lot of the locals in the Bronx stay within their local and they shop at their local stores. So that's what's kept that market strong, and investors looking for retail opportunities all the time.
Yeah, well, we thought throughout the COVID-19 pandemic that the Bronx would see, and I've talked to some owners, and they've said it's been a challenge. But from your perspective, when you talk about Bronx real estate in the commercial area, things have pretty much been stabilized.
Yeah, I think that's correct. The Bronx is seen as a robust market. It's been it's a steady market, and you're seeing a lot of institutional capital coming to the area with the new developments in Mott Haven, which is exciting for the area, and a lot of investors from other boroughs like Brooklyn, Queens, also shifting their attention to that market because prices are lower in comparison.
Yeah. Mitchel, I want you to share a little bit more with us, our viewers in particular, because I know one of the things that you're saying that if we're ever going to turn the corner, one of the things that has to happen is renewing that 421A tax abatement. Somebody may not necessarily know what that means, so educate our viewers on what that means and why you think that's important.
Yeah, so the 421A tax abatement is otherwise known as Affordable New York. So it's a tax abatement that the developer gets for 35 years if a certain number of units are affordable. That number of units is 25 to 30%, and the affordability is based on the AMI band. AMI is an acronym for Area Medium Income. So that's going to determine the affordability of the unit. You know, I understand that there's debates in terms of what's affordable and what's not, but as defined by HPD, affordable is 30% or below of your grossly income. So it's important for the 428 to be renewed. It expires of June next year, as I've mentioned, so that more units can be built, because without it, developers won't construct more affordable housing, and the pricing will actually increase.
Yeah. So what do we see happening in the future as we take forecasts into the fall and possibly even into the winter? What can you forecast for the future for us?
I think as long as the come back to work theme continues, obviously there's been some hiccups with the Delta variant. As long as that continues, the commercial market is strong. I think the Bronx will continue to see more development happening. And once the area matures, particularly Mott Haven, Brookfield's projects, phase 1 is completing the end of this year. As you start to see, residents move into these units, I think, there'll be demand. Retail will still be strong, and I think you'll see, thriving neighborhoods.
Yeah, but even though we have this economic challenge and this economic downturn due to COVID-19, how do we view affordable housing from the perspective of getting better? Do we see it getting better short term, or are we in for a long haul with this?
Well, affordable housing is a long, drawn-out process. I don't think there's any quick, easy fix. There's no, immediate fix. So as long as the HPD funding is continued to affordable houses so they build, then we'll continue to try and strive them ambitious targets that Mayor de Blasio set. Louise Carroll, who's the HPD commissioner, I think her budget for this year is 1.2 billion, which is consistent with the last few years. So New York City is continuing to demonstrate their commitment to affordable housing. So as long as that theme continues, then I think, there's more housing to be provided and to keep it affordable.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit of an idea? I don't need any heavy statistics, but give me an idea, if you will, of how the Bronx compares to other boroughs across the city.
So, there's been one of the rezonings, as I mentioned, for affordable housing was the Jerome Avenue rezoning. There has been other rezonings as well, such as Inwood. There's one in East New York. We're talking about one in Bushwick and Gowanus. The Bronx I see the Bronx as a potential solution to the New York City housing crisis. One, because there's plenty of land available, and two, there's transport infrastructure in place to provide quality housing where people want to live. So I think Bronx is doing its part, and it will continue to do so as long as I mentioned, the funding's available and the 420A is renewed.
Yeah. Michael, thank you for your insight on this. Certainly we'll continue to follow this story, and love to have you back to talk a little bit more about this as we get a little closer into 2022.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it, and I hope to meet you in person soon.
Yes, sir. Hopefully in person soon. That's the goal for a lot of us. All righty. Well, listen, if you want more information, we encourage you to visit the website at b6realestateadvisors.com. Again, that is b6realestateadvisors.com. We encourage you, please don't go anywhere. We're taking a quick break, but Open does return coming up after this. And welcome back. The Acacia Network is one of the leading social service organizations in New York City, providing integrated, culturally competent, and trauma-informed services to more than 150,000 individuals of all ages. Recently, the organization released the new Back to School webisode of its vaccine education PSA campaign. And joining us to tell more details is the Assistant Vice President of Communications and Development at Acacia Network, Gabriela González. And Gabriela, good to have you.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much to BronxNet and to you, Daren, for having us on the show to talk a little bit about our Journey to Immunity PSA campaign.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about getting people vaccinated and really doing that work. Back to school seems to be happening. The kids are pretty much getting back in there. And I know that vaccination efforts are really big and huge for your organization. Give us a little bit about how you've been involved in the vaccination campaign.
Sure. So Acacia Network is an umbrella organization, right? We really like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop. We provide everything from health, housing, economic development, and social services to cultural revitalization initiatives for people across New York State and 6 additional states and Puerto Rico. So Acacia Network has been in the front line since day one, not only through our primary care centers, ensuring that people have the health care and behavioral health needs met, but as soon as the city started putting shots in arms, Acacia Network was there, right? We started vaccinating vulnerable New Yorkers in December, and we've been in the trenches ever since, making sure that we get shots in arms. And the Journey to Immunity PSA campaign is really just an extension of that. In this case, the support was provided by Unidos US through their Esperanza Hope for All program, which is a national campaign spearheaded by Unidos US with funding from the Centers for Disease Control, right, the CDC, to ensure that we are, one, helping to reduce vaccine hesitancy among hard-to-reach communities, in this case, particularly Latinos and Hispanic individuals across the United States who had been lagging behind in terms of vaccination rates. And then the other big goal, of course, is to ensure vaccine equity, right, which goes hand in hand. What we've seen throughout the pandemic is how Black, African American, and Latino Hispanic communities have fared much worse than their white counterparts throughout the past year and a half. So part of this campaign is really to ensure that those who are most vulnerable get vaccinated and that they have the information they need to understand why it's important to get vaccinated.
As far as the public is concerned, awareness is huge, getting the word out. We are finding more and more Americans are getting vaccinated. What has been your response or your reaction to what's been happening around, particularly hesitancy? Are you still incurring a lot of hesitancy given the fact that we're this far along?
So, we're unique in the sense that Acacia Network is embedded in the communities that we serve, right? So our doctors, our clinicians, our physicians oftentimes come from the very communities that they serve. And because we develop these relationships with the patients that come through our doors, we have been uniquely positioned to really talk to them, provide the information that they need one-on-one so that they do get vaccinated. So our clinics have been busy getting those shots in arms, but I think the biggest hurdle that we across the city and across the nation are going to face is continuing to reach those people that are still hesitant, that maybe they don't have the information that they need, that they're maybe getting all of their information from social media, right? There's a lot of noise out there. And what the purpose of this campaign is to cut through that noise and really provide the information so that people, whether it's at Acacia Network or elsewhere, right, that they just go in there and get their shot. But what we've seen on the ground is that the numbers are increasing, right, across New York City, meaning the numbers of people getting vaccinated are increasing. So that's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. But even though what we were seeing a few months ago in terms of Latino, Hispanic, and Black African American individuals lagging behind, that those numbers are sort of creeping up. But we're still lagging behind in terms of zip codes, right? So the Bronx, for example, the communities where we work, they're still lagging far behind other communities, more affluent communities across New York City. So there's this, we're still segregated by zip codes in terms of vaccine equity and vaccine hesitancy. And that's what we really want to make sure that we are addressing now.
Yeah, we're getting to the back to school phase. People are getting back to school. And I know that you spend a lot of time making sure parents, students, and even teachers are getting vaccinated. Did you see a little bit more of an increase as we got to the back to school phase?
Well, in this case, we just kicked off the campaign a couple of days ago for the back to school season, and we're really busy making sure that the information is out there for parents and for students. You know, at Acacia Network, much like I'm sure across the city, maybe other vaccine centers, the population from 12 to 17 has not been as quick to respond to get those shots in arms. In Acacia's case, we currently don't offer the Pfizer vaccine, so we're unable at our clinics to vaccinate those between the ages of 12 to 17 because the Moderna and Johnson vaccines are only approved for those 18 plus. But we do have the information, the education resources out there, and then of course we can vaccinate parents, educators, etc. But the purpose of the Journey to Immunity vaccination campaign isn't ultimately to just bring people over to our clinics. It's just to make sure that people have the information and that they go to their nearest vaccination center to get vaccinated. And if they need more information about this, they can always reach out to us at acacianetwork.org/COVID vaccine. For adults ages 18 plus, they can make an appointment at our primary care centers to get vaccinated. And that's the whole goal, right? Just to make sure, especially as we head into the back to school season, that we're all doing our part to make sure we have a healthy and happy school year.
So as we're talking about information, information is key, information is critical. And I know that part of your the majority of the campaign is really about educating and bringing awareness. Are you encountering that many people still have misinformation or miseducation when it comes to the vaccine?
Certainly there's people who are still very concerned, and with valid reasons. I mean, we know that historically underserved communities, vulnerable communities of color have been marginalized, have been really failed by systems of power, right? So there's good reason why many people, you know, there's some mistrust when you have people in positions of power telling you, well, you know, you just need to get this shot in your arm, no questions asked. We are here to address those questions, address those concerns. We ourselves have our own, we come from the communities we serve, our families come from the communities we serve, and we are here to really help our neighbors, our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues understand that while their concerns are valid, all of the health information and experts and really the evidence shows that the COVID-19 vaccines are safe, they're effective, and they're the best tool to help us really end this pandemic. And right now, you know, while the level of misinformation that was out there in the beginning, you know, we heard a lot of, you know, more far-fetched claims regarding the vaccines. Right now, there's just continued, I would say, fear about a lot of people tend to fear the long-term side effects, for example, of the vaccine. And the truth is that there's no evidence of this vaccine or any other vaccine causing long-term side effects. By long-term, we mean months, years after having received the vaccine. There's no evidence that suddenly, boop, you're gonna have some side effect pop up associated with that vaccine. And that's been the case historically with all vaccines, and it is the case with the COVID vaccine as well.
So you're in episode 2 right now of the campaign rollout, and how's it going?
It's going wonderful. We just kicked off episode 2, right on track for back to school season. This episode of our multilingual campaign is in Spanish, and it features a soccer mom and her son doing one of those soccer drills with our vaccine champion, who moonlights as a soccer coach. And, they have an interaction where the mom expresses some of her concerns that all of us as parents have had, especially when it comes to our younger children. And our vaccine champion really helps to provide information to ultimately convince her to consider getting that shot for her teenager. So, the purpose of the campaign is to really present relatable scenarios. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of information out there and noise, and we've heard from doctors, and we've heard from experts, and we've heard from political figures, and just, and this campaign, the Journey to Immunity campaign, is meant to be more approachable, speak to people in their own language, in situations that all of us have been in, whether it's a mom with her son at a soccer practice, or like our first episode, a group of young New Yorkers playing basketball at the park, and sort of realizing that the way to get back to normal and to be able to eventually have a world without masks, hopefully, is to get vaccinated so that we can all do our part and go back to being healthy.
Yeah. So for people who want more information, what do they do?
For people who want more information, they can visit www.acacianetwork.org, and Acacia Network is ACACIA network.org/COVID vaccine. And of course, for the most up-to-date information on COVID-19 vaccine guidelines and vaccine requirements, visit the cdc.gov.
Well, Gabriela, thank you so much for sharing with the work of the Acacia Network. We know that you are doing your part and getting the word out for the vaccination efforts, and hopefully more Bronxites, more New Yorkers will definitely take part in the vaccination effort. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a real pleasure.
All righty. Well, want to let you know, if you want more information, again, go to that website, acacianetwork.org. You can also visit them on social media at the Acacia Network, and find out more there. Well, we've come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us, but most of all, you, the viewer, for tuning in. If you missed any part of the show, you can always catch the recablecast on Bronx Channel 67. If you have Verizon Files, that'd be Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. Again, want to thank our viewers who share with us on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN channel. Now, if you want a brand new episode of the show, we encourage you, come on back on Friday. My girl, Rita Valentine, she comes in, she does the Open, Cafe con Leche, all of that. She's got all of that for you. Friday morning with the best of arts and entertainment. You can check her out. Until then, I am Daren Jaime. Take care, God bless, and most of all, keep this channel wide open.